June 1944. Deep inside the chaos of Western Europe, German prisoners kept repeating the same unsettling confession. It wasn't the American tanks that terrified them, nor the fighter bombers that ruled the skies. What unsettled them most was a weapon they rarely saw and barely heard until it was too late. A weapon so accurate, so fast, and so relentless that entire units adjusted their behavior just to survive it. They called it the one threat that offered no warning and no escape: American artillery. That fear would come to shape the battlefield in ways few expected, and its origins stretched back decades before a single American soldier landed in Normandy. German interrogations revealed a consistent pattern. Soldiers described shells landing with razor precision, often without a single ranging shot. Positions they believed were perfectly hidden were shattered within minutes. Even freshly dug trenches, camouflaged supply areas, and temporary command posts were hit as if someone had been watching them from above. And in a way, someone was. Whenever the faint buzz of a light aircraft drifted across the sky, German troops froze. They recognized the sound instantly. The small L-4 observation plane, known for its gentle hum, meant they had 3 minutes, sometimes less, before the bombardment began. Entire companies carried stopwatches to measure how quickly destruction followed the sighting of that plane. It became a grim ritual that defined their days on the front line. What shocked the Germans most wasn't the size of American guns. Theirs were often bigger. Nor was it the ammunition stockpiles. Germans knew the United States had industry behind it. What terrified them was the speed. American fire could be summoned, coordinated, and unleashed faster than any other army in the war. German batteries needed at least 15 minutes to compute firing data, and often much longer under combat pressure. Americans did the same process in 3 minutes. The difference wasn't luck, it was a system built deliberately, piece by piece, over decades. To understand it, you have to go back to the years after World War I, when American artillery officers studied their own failures and quietly began designing something entirely new. Carlos Brewer was the first to see the flaws in the old way of shooting. He introduced better surveys, clear firing charts, and standardized maps, so every gunner could understand the battlefield the same way. But Brewer could only take the system so far. His successor, Orlando Ward, realized that the real issue wasn't the guns, it was the decentralization. Every battery performed its own calculations, wasting precious minutes. Ward built a battalion-level fire direction center, a single brain for all the guns. Instead of each battery deciding how to fire, the center took over everything. It received target reports, computed firing data, and sent out precise instructions. Suddenly, multiple batteries could hit the same target at once, perfectly synchronized. It was a revolution disguised as a simple change in workflow. But the breakthrough that turned this system from impressive to terrifying came from an officer who refused to accept slow calculations. Captain Abbott Harrington Burns spent a single night creating a tool that would transform artillery forever. His graphical firing table allowed gunners to determine settings instantly by aligning transparent scales over a chart. What once required complex math could now be done at a glance. Soldiers with only basic training could compute in seconds what previously demanded expert officers. By 1942, every American artillery battalion carried this invention. And once it hit the battlefield, German units began feeling the consequences almost immediately. The L-4 Cub became the airborne extension of this speed. Light, slow, and fragile, it seemed like the last aircraft that would inspire dread. Yet it did. High above the front, the Cub circled gently, its pilot scanning for anything that looked out of place. German armor, infantry columns, artillery batteries, and even command tents were vulnerable. Once spotted, the observer sent coordinates directly to the fire direction center. Within minutes, multiple batteries fired in perfect unison. Germans learned that when the Cub appeared, moving was suicide. Standing still wasn't much better. Days became a tense waiting game, where the greatest danger came not from what they could see, but from what might be watching them from a few hundred feet above. Battles across France and Belgium demonstrated how devastating the American system could be. At Mortain, German armor tried to break through and cut off advancing American divisions. At first light, the Cub pilots took off, quickly locating enemy tanks spread across the countryside. American artillery rained thousands of shells onto every movement. Tanks attempting to reposition were struck within seconds. Armor commanders later said it felt like invisible eyes were tracking every step they took. The attack collapsed not because of counterattacking infantry, but because artillery smothered everything before it could gain momentum. What had begun as a bold German strike ended as a costly retreat. Hill 192 told a similar story. German defenders believed the position was nearly impregnable. Trenches, bunkers, interlocked fields of fire, everything was prepared. But American artillery didn't try to overwhelm them with sheer numbers. Instead, the Fire Direction Center orchestrated a series of time-on-target missions, ensuring that shells from dozens of guns arrived within seconds of each other. The effect was catastrophic. Communications broke down, trenches collapsed, and defenders were left dazed and isolated. By the time American infantry advanced, German resistance had already been shattered by the precision and timing of the barrage. The hill fell by early afternoon, ending one of the region's most stubborn defenses. The Battle of the Bulge provided perhaps the clearest demonstration of how unstoppable the American artillery system had become. When German forces surged through the Ardennes in December 1944, fog and surprise gave them early success. But once American artillery reorganized, the momentum shifted. At Elsenborn Ridge, 348 guns coordinated fire with astonishing efficiency. Units advancing toward the ridge were broken apart before they could form attack lines. Reserves assembling behind the front were struck within minutes. German commanders wrote afterward that they couldn't mass forces anywhere without drawing immediate, crushing fire. The ridge held, and the northern offensive died there, largely because American artillery refused to let the enemy breathe. Then came the introduction of the proximity fuze, a device so astonishing that military leaders initially feared using it in Europe. Once approved during the Bulge, it changed everything again. Instead of exploding on the ground, shells now detonated above enemy positions, showering fragments downward. Trenches and foxholes, normally safe havens, offered no protection. Effectiveness tripled. German troops described the experience as hopeless, as if the sky itself had begun attacking them. The psychological damage was as severe as the physical. Soldiers who had survived months of combat started doubting whether cover meant anything at all. Nothing they did seemed to make artillery less lethal. Behind all this power stood one more advantage: mobility. American guns were fully motorized. German guns relied heavily on horses. Under fire, American units could move positions in minutes. Germans needed hours. American resupply trucks moved thousands of shells daily. German ammunition convoys, wrecked by air attacks and shortages, struggled to deliver even a fraction of what their guns required. As the war dragged on, these differences became overwhelming. American artillery wasn't just fast, it was relentless. A machine powered by doctrine, training, and logistics. By 1945, German soldiers understood a terrible truth. No matter how well they hid, how quickly they moved, or how carefully they planned, the American system could find them, compute firing data, and obliterate their positions with mechanical precision. Battles weren't decided by raw courage or superior equipment. They were decided by a unified system that turned hundreds of guns into a single, coordinated weapon. When the distant hum of the Piper Cub drifted across the battlefield, they knew the countdown had already begun. And when the shells arrived, they realized they were fighting not just an army, but a system designed to make escape impossible. In a war filled with tanks, bombers, and heroic stories, it was artillery, the unseen force, that truly broke their ability to fight.